Let us start not with the author as usual, but with his best-known work. In this case, not with Mary Shelley, but with Frankenstein. We all know its story, but there are some surprising things about how the book came to be written and how it has been read in the 2 centuries since its publication in 1818. In May 1816, Mary and Percy Bysshe Shelley, her husband and the famous Romantic poet, settled on the shores of Lake Geneva, Switzerland, where also Lord Byron was living with a group of friends. However, as Mary Shelley writes in the introduction to Frankenstein, it proved a wet, ungenial summer, and incessant rain often confined us for days to the house. It was in one of those days that suddenly Byron announced, "We will each write a ghost story." All agreed, but for days Mary could not think of anything to write about, until she had a dream. "I saw, with shut eyes but acute mental vision, I saw the pale student, Dr. Frankenstein, kneeling beside the thing he had put together. I saw the hideous phantasm of a man, the creature, show signs of life and stir with an uneasy, half-vital motion." The next morning, she told her husband and friends she had found her story. What terrified me will terrify others. Frankenstein was an immediate success, but many readers and critics were shocked by what they saw as a story of uncontrolled ambition to take over God's role in creating life. The novel was generally thought to be an attack against religion, as well as against orthodox science. Recently, however, the story has become to be read differently as a powerful warning against the danger of experimenting with humans, on the one hand, and on the other, against the attempt to take over not just God's, but also women's role in creating life. Also, the term Frankenstein has become a powerful metaphor for something that becomes a threat to its creator or society at large. A good example is the use of the term Frankenfood to criticize genetically modified food. And as a term of abuse, Frankenstein has been common in political commentary since the novel came out, as illustrated by the famous cartoon of the Irish Frankenstein, published in the British magazine Punch after a political assassination carried out by Irish nationalists in 1882. But who was this writer who was able to create such a powerful myth when she was just 18? Think of that, a teenager. Mary was the daughter of William Godwin, an important reformer and radical philosopher of the time, and Mary Wollstonecraft, the pioneer feminist and author of the celebrated pamphlet A Vindication of the Rights of Woman. Mary's life, for better and for worse, was marked by her love for and marriage to Percy Bysshe Shelley. The two met in 1814, when Mary was 16 and Shelley was 21, already married but estranged from his wife. They fell in love and ran off to Europe, wandering through France, Switzerland, and Germany. Those were happy years, but also difficult ones. Shelley was always in financial difficulties, and 3 of the 4 children Mary had by her husband died at an early age, around the time when she first conceived and then wrote Frankenstein. In fact, before she saw the birth of the creature of the novel in a dream, she had seen her dead child come to life in another dream. Dream that my little baby came to life again, that it had only been cold, and that we wrapped it before the fire, and it lived. The trials of birth and death that are central to Frankenstein were also central to Mary Shelley's life. Her own experience as a daughter and a mother had taught her that creating life could be a mortal danger. As a daughter, her mother had died only 10 days after giving birth to her. As a mother, she had brought children into the world, but they had died. At 24, Mary found herself a widow. Shelley drowned in 1822, sailing out to Livorno to Lerici, with little money to support her only surviving son, Percy Florence. Mary had to rely almost entirely on her own resources. As she wrote in a journal, Shelley died, and I was alone. My total friendlessness, my horror of pushing, and inability to put myself forward. All this has sunk me in a state of loneliness no other human being ever before, I believe, endured, except Robinson Crusoe. Despite that, she remained a generous person full of high ideals. At every risk, I have befriended and supported victims to the social system, but I make no boast, for in truth, it is simple justice I perform. Leaving Italy, Mary returned to England and devoted the rest of her life to writing in order to support her son. She wrote 5 more novels, besides Frankenstein, best of which is The Last Man, 1826. It is an apocalyptic story set in the late 21st century in a Europe devastated by a mysterious plague. The pandemic quickly sweeps across the world, causing crops failure, famine, mass migration, riots, wars, ultimately the extinction of humanity, save for one man, the one who tells the story. For its subject matter, Shelley's novel was one of the first works of dystopian fiction to have been published. So much ahead of its time was the novel, that when it came out, it met with devastating criticism, and it was not until the 1960s that it was again made available to the public in published form. Today, sound as prophetic as Frankenstein, as you might appreciate reading about it in your anthology. Frankenstein, The Last Man, so much for women of the Romantic age being out of touch with reality. Mary Shelley certainly wasn't.